Before you go into the weekend, I wanted to give you something to think about, okay? Particularly when it comes to any of the projects that you're implementing for your clients right now, and you get pushback from teams, which always happens. I said that yesterday, that the number one obstacle to a successful implementation, whatever project that is, including technology projects, is user adoption. So teams are not buying it. Okay. And so I see that so often that managers of any kind of team, they talk to their team members and they tell them, how great the world will be like after you've implemented that project or implemented the technology and got that work or have automation in place, and life will be so much easier. And they're with the best of intentions, and then all they get is the glare, so, and maybe you've gotten the glare before, and we're shocked, right? Because like, many of those managers mean well, but when teams push back, that means that they're telling you something. That what they're telling you in particular is that they don't like the idea. Okay, so here's why. So there are two forces that drive human behavior. Number one is the need to avoid pain, and number two is the desire to gain pleasure. So, for example, if you hated your job, that's a lot of pain, and you have a new offer that's better than the one that you are already having or currently having, that's great, right? So you need to avoid pain, the job, and the desire to gain pleasure, a better job, is these two forces go into the same direction. Um, but sometimes that doesn't work that way. For example, when when you hate your job, but you don't have an offer. You have no other alternative. You do not know, where to go. Then that force, the desire to gain pleasure, works in the opposite direction. So you have these two forces, and that means there is a lot of pressure, right, on you, right? So the job and no compelling future. So in the corporate setting, what that means is for you. Yeah, as a consultant, you have that great idea of that new tool or that new project or that new automation initiative, and the teams, they will say, wait a minute, when we get there, we're going to get fired, right? Because once we have automated, then they may not need us anymore. Yes, they tell us right now, um, we your life is going to be easier, but it will also mean that they will less need fewer people, and we will have to shrink our team, and I could be one of them, right? So that's you're not going to make progress if that is the case. The other thing that can happen is that they do like the idea of the future state, but they anticipate that implementing the project is going to be too painful for too long. So now you have the need to avoid pain, not being met. Yes, so but it's actually the need to avoid pain, but their need to avoid pain does not move in the same direction that you want to move, even though the future state is desirable. So you have those two forces going into opposite directions, and that's when you feel tension in the team. And the worst scenario is that both are true, right? So implementing is more painful um, than the current state, and after implementation, the state is not going to be better either. Why is that? Because for a few things. Number one, for some implementations that take longer, can you prove that the future state is going to be better? If so, what is your credibility or or their manager's credibility to get us there? Have they done anything before? That's why it is so important that you, as a consultant, go in and you are the authority and you know what you need to do and can show that you have the street cred to implement. Yes, but in the heads is more than that. One is it can take a lot of time, and there can be prolonged pain, number one. Number two, they also may have to learn new skills, and they're wondering now, will my manager give me enough time? Will they be patient enough with me to go through that learning curve, right? They may perceive that either in the short run or for a sustained period of time, that implementing is additional work. Like they're already busy, and now you're adding more hours. Another additional initiative, maybe have to run like two processes in parallel. So the need to avoid pain drives them away from that project. All right. The other thing that can happen is that the future state will require them to drop everything that they know, because now they need to work differently with different tools, different software, different way of communicating and so on. So two things that you're telling them: you need to acquire new skills, and the skills that you have may no longer be needed. So that's going on the head. And if you do not address that, you're not going to make progress, because these two forces will either work in opposite direction, which is stress, or in these opposite directions, right, which is tension, or all of them go into the opposite direction, which is regression. Okay, so the only way to address that is by acknowledging their pain. And that's the one thing that everybody forgets. Every manager, every consultant, they talk about how great life is going to be, but they do not acknowledge their pain. So what you can do, for example, is say things: hey team, I wanted to tell you that I so acknowledge and value you for being here. I know right now, with everything that's going on, it can be very confusing. There's a lot of additional work going on, and I wanted to thank you and acknowledge you for being here, showing up, and doing the work. I do know that the future state could mean this, this, and that. So acknowledge their pain by honoring, valuing, and respecting them for what they're already doing, and acknowledging, right? So because everybody wants to be acknowledged, valued, honored, respected, nobody ever hears that. So that's my piece of advice. So if you feel team pressure and pushback, they're telling you it's either too painful to implement, or it's the future state is not going to be better. It may even be worse, or both. And you just begin that conversation, because you want to move, you want to have both forces in the right direction, in the same direction, moving forward. Start with acknowledging their pain. So think about that over the weekend and look at the projects that are maybe at a standstill or not going well. What's the pain that you need to acknowledge? Where are the forces going? And start from there. All right. So I wish you a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday. All right. Bye.